Stand up, Australia. Holden has served it up to the world.
An Australian team and an Australian car is going to win. The Holden flags are going to be waved. What an achievement this is going to be. Down through the VB dipper for the last time.
Holden Monaro, 7-litre, 427, coming into Monaro. Gasses it under the main straight for the last time. Takes the checkered flag.
We wanted to go in it and we wanted to win it.
We needed mechanical components, suspension, brakes.
There were a lot of difficulties. It was what the car deserved.
A moment in your life that you just cherish so much.
In 2002, Gary Rogers Motorsport partnered with Holden to win the first ever Bathurst 24-hour endurance race in this, the Holden Monaro 427C. The story of the Monaro program is one of the greatest in Australian motorsport history. It all started in 2001, when Holden Motorsport manager at the time, John Stevenson, had an idea of taking the Monaro from the showroom back to the racetrack.
The Holden Motorsport group want to race Holdens. And now the Monaro came along as a pretty special car. Even though it hadn't been released to the public, we just started informal discussions about racing the car. And that involved discussions with V8 supercars, because it was a logical place for it to go. But those discussions didn't get anywhere. They didn't want to have a third car in the series. They just wanted to be the straight sedan cars. And we're at Bathurst, I think it was 2000, might have been the year. I got invited to a meeting with Ross Palmer, who at that stage was envisaging a 24-hour race for his Pro Car series. He really wanted to know whether we would be interested in running the Monaro in a 24-hour race. And of course we said, well, we would, but we wouldn't put the car up in a race against serious opposition and over a distance we'd never run the car without having some chance of success. We talked to some of the teams about how would we run the car, who would run it. HRT at the time, they had the responsibility of winning on the track in supercars. They didn't want the diversion of another racing program. We turned to Gary, and GRM was really the right choice.
They came to me and said, look, would you be interested in doing this program, and if so, would you be able to do it in the time frame? We thought, yeah, well, we can do it. I mean, to be offered the opportunity to something to do that was as exciting as that, I mean, clearly all you wanted to do was get it to work, and I just knew that we had the right people, and if we just could have head down our bum up, we would get it to work.
We wanted to go in it and we wanted to win it. It was what the car deserved. We were convinced that if we did the car right with the knowledge we had of that track and our experience with supercars, we could build a car that would actually win the race.
This was going to be the Australian 24-hour race, and to do it with the Australian-built car up against the world's best was just a really exciting thing to do and to be part of. Everyone took an interest in it. It was just extremely satisfying.
GRM proved to be an excellent choice as the car builder. We really relied pretty much 100% on their expertise in building supercars.
We needed durability and mechanical components, suspension, brakes, gearboxes and all that. So that's where we really focused our mindset, and also the equipment that you would need to go 24 hours. We rehearsed, you know, practicing in the night, doing all sorts of things that we had never done as a team, but clearly the people were good enough to be able to do that.
And the initial process when we were first spoken about building the car was we weren't going to run it until March next year. But then when the 24-hour race came up, Holden saw that as an excellent opportunity to market the car, and so we sort of had to wind things up a bit. But I'm fortunate I've got a great bunch of workers, and we all sort of dug in and got the thing finished in time.
As most people know, Gary doesn't have heart attacks, he gives them. So he just come along and tell us, get it done, you know.
There were a lot of difficulties at the start. Well, we had an engine that was brand new for the world, and trying to turn it into a racing engine was a lot of work.
We were going to be at a huge weight disadvantage to the other cars, so we said, well, look, let's run an engine out of GM Motorsport. But the actual development of the engine were pretty much in the hands of the engine department at GRM.
The engine's a C5R, so a 7-litre LS style engine. It produces about a bit over 700 horsepower. By the time we got the engine, the first one completed, I think it was only several weeks before the race.
And I can remember running it on the dyno, just slowly mapping the fuel, and we got to 4,500 RPM and it had 650 foot-pounds of torque, which I thought was enormous. We thought, how good's this? And we sort of give it a bit of a strain to go a bit higher, and it just sprayed water out the sides of the engine, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, engine had to come apart very quickly and repaired, and it made probably, if anything, too much power at the start, so we had to calm it down a little bit.
We wanted to make a public launch of the car at a venue where there would be a lot of publicity, a lot of spectators, and Bathurst was the obvious choice. It was a real rush. Garth was to drive the car and do a couple of laps.
Back in the day, you could buy track time as promotional track time, and Holden had some track time, and they didn't tell supercars at the time, but we actually ran the car around, so it was a bit of hush-hush. They brought the car out, and I was about to jump in the car, and supercars were going crazy. They didn't want it to happen because this was a rival race to the Bathurst 1000. And I remember I drove the car, and it was pouring with rain to do these demo laps at Bathurst, and we didn't have any wets for it. I was driving around in this brand new car at Bathurst in the pouring rain on slicks. You know, the definition of being nervous in a race car, that was it.
We took it to Calder, and it ran for a couple of laps and started misfiring really bad. We only got to run the car once more. We took it to Winton. That was about it.
The car straight out of the gate was pretty good. I remember at Winton we didn't change the car much setup-wise.
It was impressive. You didn't have to work it extremely hard to do high speeds.
To see that car when we got to the circuit and actually physically see it go round with the people who had helped us build this car, it's just an amazing, it's very hard to put into words the sort of satisfaction. It's not exciting. To me, it's not excitement. It's just an absolute moment in your life that you just cherish so much.
Well, we were very determined to win this race from the outset, and we knew we'd have some serious opposition from overseas. We were going to have Ferraris, there was a Mosler there was some other exotic cars, and there's the Monaro, and we wanted to make this Australia versus the world. This is what we wanted to do. We wanted to prove that an Australian-built car could run a 24-hour race that had never been run in Australia before and win it in front of all comers.
We had 4 great drivers. Garth Tander, no doubt, great driver, driving for us in the supercar cars, beautiful.
Being young, I think I was probably then only 23, 24 at the time. Being the GRM employed driver, I was involved more of the development of the car and the initial shakedown and things like that.
Nathan Pretty was part of the Nations Cup program that we saw would fit into this build really well.
Got the invite to drive this and be partnered up with both Garth and Richo to do the 24-hour in such an iconic car was just sensational.
Stephen Richards, no doubt, like great driver, absolutely great.
Sounded pretty exciting to me. You know, all this new technology that it had, sequential gearbox, big 7-litre engine. It was essentially a V8 supercar.
So initially we thought we'd only have 3 drivers, and we had to think about this. We thought, gee, 3 drivers, a bit of sleep, a bit of tide, a bit of food. We'd better maybe have a reserve, or not a reserve, but another driver just in case. Cameron McConville was a real Holden person and could drive very well. So we figured he can drive, he's our boy.
So yes, I got the call, but it would have been only a week or maybe 10 days before the event. So I'd never seen the car, sat in the car and turned up at Bathurst and had my first seat fit on Friday practice.
So the scene was set. 36 cars on the entry list for the first ever Bathurst 24-hour race. For the Monaro boys, 6 or 7 GT cars to contend with. Headlined by the Certec Motorsport Porsche from the UK, led by David Brabham and multiple Bathurst champ Alan Grice. The Ferrari car from Prancing Horse, it was a contender too. Brad Jones, Paul Morris and John Bowe among its driver lineup. But for the Holden boys, their car had only done 500 kilometres of testing. It really was the case when they arrived at Mount Panorama of Australia against the world.
It's a very sophisticated race car, but I guess in reality it's not as sophisticated as a factory-built Porsche or a factory specially built Ferrari.
What are you guys talking about? Just trying to pay out a bit on those Euros, mate, the imports, see what they... Do you reckon they've made allowances for those 8-foot kangaroos that are going to be jumping the fences?
It was really exciting because it was such a new event. We were sort of up against it. We knew we were up against it. There were 24-hour specialist Porsche teams from overseas.
Prancing Horse had put together a couple of, I think, a Ferrari team and one other, I think it was a Porsche.
The Ferrari was really quick and from memory was the fastest car in qualifying, and JB was always quick up there.
The British Porsche team, I think they were called Surtec, they had David Brabham, Alan Grice, and then there was the Mosler as well. None of us even knew what a Mosler was. I think if someone drove that car properly, that would have been a seriously fast race car.
If you look at the strategy, it started at 4 o'clock, finished 24 hours later, and raced as hard as the car could right to the end.
We don't need to be heroes here. We don't have to show off who's the fastest of the four of us.
We all sat down, came up with the perfect number that we thought the car could keep doing for the full 24-hour period. So therefore, we just kept trying to hit that number.
Almost invoke a bit of Brockism, where you just sort of get into this rhythm and in this feeling and let the car sort of dictate to you how you want to drive the car. And remember, Brock was up there with us.
You debuted in a Monaro here in Bathurst.
I did indeed, all those years ago, 1969, Holden Monaro GTS 350. Here we are again now, 2002. Monaro's back out there again. I'm keeping a pretty close eye on this thing. I think I've done a wonderful job building it.
During the night, you know, we had a roster system where we had to have at least one driver awake, one driver transitioning out of the car into bed during the night, and one person asleep.
We all wanted to win. You could see that in the team, the amount of hours that had gone into the car, but I guess the nervousness was about the car was untried.
And it has been a long time since a car has generated as much interest at Mount Panorama as the Monaro. Craig Denyer, will it go the distance?
Well, a lot of question marks about that, of course, Mark. It did have problems yesterday in qualifying.
When we get up there, we go out in the first practice session and the diff oil temperatures were frightening. That was in like 3 or 4 laps, so we had to try and improve that. We put an extra cooler on. We had a spare cooler. We ended up putting 2 of them. Then we were going into qualifying. We went into qualifying round and got a few laps in qualifying, and we broke the diff out of the carrier again.
I was the least experienced driver, but I ended up qualifying the car just because I needed the laps, and Gary was very grateful in letting me do that whole session. So I think we did a 2:16 or something like that in quali, which was good enough to be on the front row, but the car was clearly capable of going much quicker than that. I was just getting my head around it.
It wasn't the fastest car on the track during qualifying, but certainly in the warm-up today, it was by about 2.5 seconds faster than John Bowe's Ferrari. A lot of unknowns about it. 7 litres, 427 cubic inches.
There's no way this thing will be running when it gets dark, you know. We're not going to do... We won't need to worry about the engine. The rest of it will just fall to bits. So away we went, and the rest is pretty much history. We did have a bit of trouble in the race, but that's yet another story.
In joyful strains and let us sing. Advance Australia fair.
And it's John Bowe on pole position. Garth Tander alongside.
I knew the Monaro had so much torque that it would climb up the mountain so quickly. We knew the Ferrari was quick across the top of the mountain, so I thought, nah, bugger it.
And away they go. Bowe's got the run. Will Tander run with him side by side up the hill? It'll be 3.6 litre versus 7 litre.
Just put my foot down and went boom, straight past the Ferrari.
The Ferrari, though, coming under pressure, and indeed the Holden goes ahead. So great start by Garth Tander. He moves himself ahead. It's the Holden leading the Ferrari in second place, and already, look, those two sprinting away.
We knew that the speed of the Monaro and the outright cars was going to be so much faster than the class cars, the smaller cars, if you like, that we caught them and started lapping them after 15 odd minutes or so. We were just so much faster and felt like we were so much bigger than them. We felt like bullies out there, to be honest.
And you can see John Bowe there, goes through to take the race lead. So he's had quite a long limp back to the pits.
50 minutes in, already we had our first little curveball when he got a puncher.
I was just across the top of the mountain, and I just felt a bit weird, so I sort of backed right off, and then as I got to Forest Elbow and tried to turn around Forest Elbow, it felt it was shaking. So I slowed right down, didn't want the tyre to start flapping and do damage to the car, so slowed right down. I think we may have dropped to third or fourth. It wasn't like we'd lost, you know, a massive amount of time, and we just sort of, you know, got back into the rhythm and away we went again.
And look at the awesome power of this Monaro that absolutely unleashed up Mountain Straight.
It was hard because you wanted to go faster as a race driver. You really wanted to try and unleash it a little bit, but we had an ultimate plan in hand, and that was to get to the full 24 hours. So we had to stick to that number, and that was relatively tough when the car wanted to go faster.
When you look at how it felt, I would say it was 10 years ahead of its time.
Just get the feeling at the moment that maybe John Bowe is writing, "Dear Santa, what I'd like for Christmas is," because that Monaro at the moment showing him the way round.
I can remember one of the stints that Garth was doing. Garth took 4 laps off this guy we were chasing in his hour and 20 minutes of fuel that he had. The engine itself, I believe, ran for over 3 times of not having oil pressure for 70 seconds with no oil pressure, which is way too long. Like, it should have blown up, but it didn't.
I remember the Ferrari had an engine problem reasonably early, and that was to us a bit of a sigh of relief, because if the Ferrari was going to be reliable, we thought that was definitely a danger. But there's always a question, certainly back then, over some of the Ferrari's reliability.
It was short-lived glory for the Italian supercar as it suffered oil pressure problems and a costly engine change. With the Monaro back in the lead as dusk settled, no one could have predicted the drama ahead.
We had a drama, if I remember rightly, with the fuel tank. We had no option but to bring the car in.
Giving the lead to the number 24 Certec Porsche of David Raven.
We've got a fuel pressure problem, and I think one of the lift pumps in the tank has become inoperative, but you know, I mean, it could have been worse, and it's only early days yet. There's a long way to go.
One of the biggest things of the whole race, and certainly had to happen when I was in the car, was the early hours on Sunday morning when...
Tangle with a slower car caused driver Nathan Pretty some problems.
Well, Nathan got punted by someone, I'm not sure who, spun him around, and then when he was off the track and the car stalled, it wouldn't start.
She had a bit of, it was a lady driver, she had a bit of a moment, and I just went to go around the outside of her, and she just had a bigger moment and straight into the door of the car and spun me around into the driver's door. So I'm sitting in the gravel trap, almost just prior to the gravel trap, because if I was in the gravel trap, I probably wouldn't have got out, but it actually wouldn't restart. And I couldn't, with the clutch in, I couldn't get it out of gear because of the sequential gearbox, I couldn't get it out. But I had to get out of the car so that I could actually rock the car, because I knew the dogs were just too tight, so I had to rock it and rock it enough so I could loosen up the dogs, and then jumped in, got it out of gear and into neutral, jumped back in, thought, I'll see if I can start it. It started, so I plugged the radio back in and got on to Gaz and the guys back at the pits and said, all good, I've actually managed to get it restarted, so I'm coming back to the pits.
And I remember I was hopping in the car next stint, so I'm waiting in the pit lane and he hasn't come around. And about 5-6 minutes later when he arrived, I went to open the door and there was a massive dent in it, but the door opened perfectly.
It was quite a large incident, but as I said to Garth, I said, woke him up, I said, how are we going? I said, no, we're still going all right, but slight issue, I mean, I've scratched it. You know, I have put a scratch in it. He goes, oh, is it bad? I said, no, it's all right. As it turned around, when he come back in to wake me up, he woke me up with his size 11 race boot in the head and having a laugh and a joke and saying, scratched it? You nearly tore the side out of the car because it had quite a large dent in it.
I don't have much of a recollection of Nathan's incident because I was asleep. And I don't really recall. All I know is when I got out, we were putting a bit of rubbish on Nathan for damaging the thing. But full credit to him, he got it out of the sand, dug it out, and got it back to the pits.
And we've now fueled her up, made a tyre change, and we're on our way again.
But the big Holden was soon back out on the track in pursuit of the Porsches.
So many ups and downs, you know, we were leading by 8 or 10 laps, then we were down by 2 laps.
The Certec Porsche emerging from the night with a strong 7-lap lead as the race entered its 14th hour. As the morning warmed up, so did the battle for the lead, as the Holden homed in on the Porsche.
As we got closer to the front, the guys that were leading crashed into things and fell out, and I reckon we were within a few laps of the leader and they drove it into the fence, flat out, booked into the fence. We thought they'd get it going, but they didn't.
obviously very disappointed.
Oh, disappointed, obviously. You know, we put in something like 21 very good hours. The Monaro did an excellent job chasing.
And you're riding with the race leader, Stephen Richards.
We were all absolutely toasted, but for some reason, just the way it all worked out, I was in the car at the end.
Holden Monaro, 7-litre, 427, Cumming Monaro, gasses it onto the main straight for the last time, takes the checkered flag in the first ever 24-hour endurance race at Mount Panorama. Congratulations, guys. What a brilliant drive.
Unbelievably satisfying feeling, because to be the guy that was in the car at the end, the way it worked out, and drive that car across the line with the history that it does have for Australian motorsport, that was really good.
He is over the moon, and quite rightly so. The Holden wins here at Mount Panorama. They said it wouldn't happen. They were wrong.
Australia, you've done yourself proud.
We were racing against a Ferrari, we were racing against a Porsche, we were racing against a BMW, we were racing against a Mosler, and here we are in our Australian-built, Australian-designed, Australian-crewed race car with Australia against the world, and we come out on top.
Racing for Australia and Gary Rogers Motorsport, the Monaro, driven by Garth Tander, Stephen Richards, Nathan Pretty, and of course, Cameron McConville.
We all had tears in our eyes, and I get goosebumps just recounting it, you know, standing on that top step at Bathurst.
Not everybody realises that we were running supercars flat out at the time, but then to turn around with a small group of workers and take on a project as big as this and to carry it through, you're just immensely proud and satisfied that that group of people have been able to do that with you.
Geez, how lucky am I to be a part of that? I think, you know, one of 4 guys and then Gary Rogers as a team. You know, wins are great because you get to cross the line and get the trophy, but it's the story, it's the back end story, and every one of those races that I've had the opportunity to win has a different story, and that's got an incredible story. I rank it really highly.
The Bathurst 24-hour was definitely the highlight of my racing career. To win that was just unbelievable.
We really bonded, you know, we just got along really well. It was like 4 mates, you know, getting in this amazing machine.
To win any race is difficult, but to win a 24 hours is really, really difficult. And for me, emotionally, it was just an outstanding moment. As I said before, you know, the people that were there on the day were the people that built the car, and it also supported our supercar program. And it's just, you cannot put in words how great a feeling that you have internally when you get things like that to happen in your life. They don't come very often, and when they do, that is a very, very, very special time.
And Monaro making a 1 and 2 in the toughest race Australia has to offer.
Well, Gary's one of these guys that just loves doing things, and he's in the position to be able to do amazing things. And I think for him to come up with the idea of let's build another car is fantastic. I guess the 3rd in the series. Okay, well, the intention, if we go back to the original program, we were always going to build 3 of them, but it really didn't get to that stage. About a couple of months ago, when we didn't have any work to do and we were working what we're going to do with our staff and people to keep things going,
I thought, well, we'll sort of, some jobs we could or couldn't do. We went out the back and we had a look at all our old containers where we've stored our goods for many, many years. And in those containers, we found quite a bit of equipment that we used for the construction of the original cars. And Barry said to me, well, why don't we just build another car? And I thought at the time, well, why wouldn't we build another car? I mean, what we did with those 2 cars for the 24-hour race on 2 occasions with a minimum amount of staff, built those cars, raced those cars and had the success we had. So he said, do it, let's do it. So we're doing it.
One thing that Gary's been really good at is hoarding things, and now that we've decided to build another Monaro, it is fantastic that he's such a great hoarder, because in a container here at the back of work, we've got a lot of components that came out of the original O2 build of the first Monaro. We haven't got everything, but we've got most things that we do need, and take a look inside here. She is a bit of a mess, but there's plenty of bits and pieces. There's something really special actually that we came across while we're unpacking all this gear. I'll just come and grab it. Brocky used to love doing a bit of woodwork, and made Gary this wooden Monaro to thank him for all the work and effort that the team put in building the red one that Brocky raced in 03 and actually won the Bathurst 24-hour in 03. So we've got a couple of Monaros, or so-called looking Monaros, here in the backyard of GRM. The red one here is a car that we bought from the Holden wreckers. There's a lot of genuine parts in these race cars that you need, and whether it be door striker plates, window trims, mirrors, you know, headlights, tail lights, hundreds and hundreds of parts that you need, and very hard to get these days. Best way to go about it was to buy a car. So a lot of the components out of that car will end up in our 427 race car. Next to it, we've actually got another body shell. So this body shell is an O2 Monaro body shell, so the first of the Monaros. We're contemplating building our last Holden, or the last Holden, off this shell, but we came across a VZ Monaro, the very last Monaro that was made in Australia, so we chose to go after VZ.
I look after the workshop. I've been here for around 17 years, and we've had a lot of different car builds and things along the way, so I help source some of the parts, the harder parts. There's literally thousands of parts all over the car that we need to source, make, find, buy, whatever we have to do.
It's going to be a challenge in itself, just making parts and finding parts and getting it all happening again, since it's been 18 years since we made the first one.
We'll only do this if we can make the car exactly the same other than colour. You know, we don't want to build a legendary imitation car. The fact is we've got the legendary car, and if we can build another one of these cars, I don't want to take away from the LA car at all, and that's why we would make the car a different colour. But I also don't want to have a car that goes to Hot Rod Show and then someone says, oh, that's not really the car had this, this and this. This car will be identical in every mechanical and physical attribute that it will have. As simple as that, otherwise we wouldn't do it.
So June 1, day 1 of the Monaro 427 build. We've got the chassis here in the fab shop. Obviously a lot of the original sheet metal of the car needs to be removed to get it prepared, ready to build into a race car. The rear firewall's been taken out so we can build the rear cage in the back of the car. Genuine front guards are off, the bonnet's off. The roof will come off next week so they can build the cage inside the car, and pretty exciting times. So we're up in the GRM composites room, getting the composites prepared, the composite panels prepared for the Monaro. Back in 2002, the cars didn't quite have the amount of composite panels as a current day car has, but front bumper, under tray, side skirts and rear bar, so all that's getting done. Over the years at GRM, we've produced a number of supercars, and one of our older supercars that we sold to a fellow called Aaron Tebb many years ago rang the same shocks as what the Monaro 427 did, and we've been searching around trying to find the original shocks, but they no longer make them, so we contacted Aaron, and the good fellow that he is, pulled them out of the car and sent them back to us, so we've got genuine, exact same shock suspension setup as what we had back in the day. We're going to donate a more current pair to him, but kindly gave them back to us to help with his build. So here's an original upright back from the O2 Monaro. It's amazing what people read on the, someone read one of Aaron Noonan's stories and realised they had 2 of these in their garage at home. They rang us and said, would you like them? And here we go. So 2 less parts he needs to make because kindly donated to us by a loyal motorsport supporter.
Second weekend, stripped the Monaro down and put it onto the jig table here, which we set up all the main upright jigging components, sit the car onto it. And then what we'll do is that picks up all the front and rear suspension points. We'll get the new car on, and that gives us a starting and a basis point to start making all our components from. What we've also got is we've got the engine in the engine room that's getting pulled apart. It's been on the shelf for a very long time, so it needs to be pulled apart and checked. We've got metal spinnings getting made for the wheel tubs, front and rear.
The original concept, once we decided to build it, let's get some time constraints around this. Let's not just say we'll build this car and 2 years from now we've got a car. We looked at there's the event at Bathurst at the end of the year as basically a Holden celebration of Holden's association with all the teams in motorsport. What they did is absolutely fantastic. So we can give it a reasonable run because that is the plan. It will be at that event in November. Look, what we do with it after that, I haven't really decided. You know, cross the next bridge when we get to it, as most of the time we do.
Baz spoke about the donor car last time. Since then, we've managed to acquire some extra panels for the car, front spoiler and rear spoiler and side skirts, which we actually sold about 10 years ago, and we've acquired them back. So when they got wind of we're doing a Monaro, they contacted us and we ended up acquiring them back. So it was quite good to see that they're still ready to go and we can use them.
Week 3, the Monaro build, motoring on really, really well. The boys have been making a couple of little components that are needed for the build. One example is a fuel catch tank. This actual tank was designed for Bathurst, so really simple system. How it works is when the fuel drops below, this line runs out of the tank into this tank, catch tank. Once the fuel drops below this point here, a light will come on. They know they've got 1 lap to go up Bathurst and quickly get into the garage and get some fuel. So they're going really good. The fabricators are ahead of time with what they're doing, and we're looking forward to see this car take shape.
So basically the main focus at the moment is to set the car up. We're cutting away componentry of the car that we need to fit the massive wheels and suspension in. We're to bang the shockers, points and everything in and cut all this, put clearance bars in. The next stage will be trying to put a roll cage main hoop in. We'll set that up at the right angles. And then we cut all the floor out and pick up all these mounting points for the rear cradle. The rear cradle then's got to be put in here. We've already jigged it off the old yellow Monaro, and then that'll be rejigged onto this car so it's all in exactly the right spot. The front of the car's the same. We're working on a firewall at the moment. We'll fully weld all that right out. And just at this stage, we're sort of doing sheet work, getting ourselves ready. So once we start putting the shock points in, we can then run our bar work to it, constrain it all, make it absolutely perfect.
So week 6, we're still in the fab shop. The boys are pretty keen to get the Monaro out of here. We're sort of a bit over halfway through getting the cage all done. The front end of the car getting built here at the moment. Young Damo here is actually fitting the inner guards. So the inner guards for the Monaro, we get these spinnings done. So it's just looks like a big dish really. And you basically chop that in half, and one side becomes a left-hand front inner guard and the other side becomes the right. There you go. There's your inner guard, that sits up there. The wheel slots in underneath it. Should be done in a few weeks, we can't wait.
Well, I might have a drive, but I'm not up to it anymore to be able to drive a racing car in a properly competitive manner, and I think I would make a go to myself. And look, I love what I did. I had an enormous amount of fun, and I'm having every bit as much fun doing projects like this and running the cars that we run. But I would love to have a drive of the car, but would I race the car? I'd be extremely surprised if I do, but maybe if I do a couple of laps, it might be a bit better than I think I am. So we'll wait and see, a bit like the colour. We'll keep waiting and watching.
So here we are, week 9 of the Monaro car build, 3rd week into putting the cage into the car. Put in about 60 bars so far. We've got about 10 or so to go, so we're getting towards the end. Then after that, we're going to put in seat mounts, exhaust boxes, the rear tubs, air jacks, and then mount the bird cage in.
This is the bird cage we're setting up for the new build of the Monaro. Spent about last week and a half slowly fitting it up to the old jig, and we're about half a week away from finishing it. Then we'll be fitting it up into the car, get that part up and done, the roll cage fully welded and finished. Once we get to that stage, we'll start doing bolt-in componentry, weld-in, steering mounts, pedal boxes, seat mounts, seatbelt mounts, all the small, intricate parts of the build.
Right, so up here in the composite shop, Mickey, who runs our composites department, has been real busy. We had most of the mould still left over from the Monaro, but there were a couple of things we didn't have. One was the mould for the rear spoiler. It's got a little boot lid spoiler. It's not on here at the minute. It's in the mould room, so we've had to make a new mould to reproduce the proper spoiler for the Monaro. Apart from that, all the other parts are coming along well. We've got about 15 composite parts on the car, so I think we've got 2 or 3 more to tick off and we're on the way. 9 weeks into the Monaro build.
Nearly there.
Well,
halfway.
Most of the stuff's getting gathered up and about it. I know the car's got to go together.
We're on the job.
We're on the job. The old one back together too, by the way.
Well, I know. That'll be the problem because we probably nicked half the bits for the new one.
No, we didn't. We had them all at the back there in a container.
Yeah,
and Nan's
good,
been busy gathering all the things together. The composite boys are putting together a lot of things up there.
Gypsy's on the engine. We're flying. We're flying.
Now, we're going to start thinking about the colour, Dad. I know you loved your yellow one, but we're not making a copy of this car. We're making your car, so it's important to think about the heritage.
Heritage will come up with something I've got something in my mind, but it'll be really special. I'm not telling anyone, not even my trusted family.
Right.
That includes you, right?
Really? Right, OK. Well, I'll look at the old cars up there.
No, it won't be any of those.
None of those?
No.
Right.
No.
Geez, could be...
No.
Might be a worry.
No, you'll love it. I've got it right in
history?
here. No, I've seen the history, and it's not necessarily a history of a Monaro, but it's certainly strong history. Right. You will love it, seriously you will. Right. You reckon I've really lost it this time?
Look forward to seeing it.
Good.
I was a bit keen on to have another yellow car, but then really, why would you have another yellow car? The red car's been done. I like white as a base colour, but look, I thought we needed to do something different and special, and that's what we'll be doing, something different and special. Some may like it, some may not, but you know what? I'll like it, and I'm paying, so that's the most important bit.
A really exciting day today for the Monaro build. I've just got the engine in, just spent 150 hours pulling apart, cleaning, measuring and putting back together. It's been enjoyable times to bring back a few old memories. I'll be really excited to hear this thing run. It always gives a nice deep sound, so it's good.
So, Dad, there's the finished product.
The end result.
Looks absolutely fantastic.
It does.
After all the decision-making, thinking about things, you decided to base the car off the very first Holden Dealer Team racing car, Racing Monaro.
Correct.
Which is a 1969 350 GTS.
Yep.
What made you finally, I know you're thinking of your history and Holden history, what made you finally decide?
I just thought it was the first Monaro, that was the colour of the first car, and it really suited the car. And I'm really pleased that we've gone down that route. I just think it's absolutely first class.
So for the last new Holden to be leaving Australia, to leave in the livery based on the very first Holden Dealer Team racing car, is pretty special.
Well, do you think we might do another one, maybe?
See if anyone's got any money out there. We might find someone.
Let's hope we can.
The Monaro build started when the lockdown happened after the Melbourne Grand Prix last year. We were doing a bit of tidying up at GRM. We found some old parts and bits and pieces, and one thing led to another, and decided to build it. We were aiming to finish it in November last year, being 2020, and here we are, the middle of 2021, and she's finally done. There's been a few hold-ups along the way, but for all the guys that work at GRM, the work and effort to get this car done, and to look at it now, it's fantastic. I'd say in excess of 3,000 man-hours have gone into building chassis number 4 in the Monaro. So, yeah, Gary's tremendously proud about the car and what the boys have done to get the car built. And he's got his name on the side, and he might fancy a few laps in it at some stage, so we'll see what the future holds. But, yeah, no, you don't really want to put a stone chip on it. It looks that good. When Holden stopped production in Australia, you know, we thought that was the last brand new Holden to leave the shores, and here we are in 2021, a couple of years on, and here it is, the last brand new Holden built in Australia, built at GRM, and what an iconic model to build as the last one, Monaro.